Good morning, I'm Kristen Folletti and welcome to News Desk on SiliconANGLE TV for Tuesday, June 4th, 2013. Zynga is making massive cuts in an extreme effort to transition into a company now focused on mobile gaming. With us now to provide her breaking analysis on Zynga's recent layoff decisions is SiliconANGLE Senior Managing Editor, Kristen Nicole. Good morning, Kristen.
Morning.
Zynga has confirmed that it will lay off 18% of its workforce, which represents 520 employees, in an effort to reduce costs as it seeks to drastically restructure its troubled business. As part of its restructuring, Zynga has also announced it will be closing its offices in New York, Los Angeles, and Dallas. So, Kristen, 18% of a workforce, that's a pretty significant chunk of workers. Can you explain Zynga's reasoning behind their restructuring efforts?
Well, the Zynga blog updated a post in the last few hours kind of explaining the decisions behind this, and it was a statement from CEO Mark Pinnicus, and what he said is they really need to get smaller in order to get bigger. So they're a company that grew very quickly with their web presence and has had a tough time transitioning to mobile, and now they realize that they have a pretty bloated company on a global scale, and as they make this shift into mobile, they really need to find a way to become more nimble and restructure their business model here. So one of the very painful steps towards that is to let go of a significant amount of their staff.
As we know, Zynga got its start as a web gaming company, but they suffered a rocky IPO and have struggled in their shift to become a company focused on mobile gaming. Facebook is another company that recently had to deal with that issue. However, they haven't suffered quite as much. So why do you think the transition has been so difficult for Zynga in particular?
Well, they're focused on gaming, and they actually relied very heavily on Facebook's network for a large part of their success. And with Facebook, they are really dealing with a broader aspect of our social networking activities. And a lot of people will use the Facebook mobile application, even if there's several reasons why they would use the Facebook mobile application, regardless of the user experience. People still want to access their Facebook. The same has not been true with gaming, particularly Zynga's games. Some of them have done well. They've had a very interesting acquisition strategy in trying to tap into the mobile marketplace. It hasn't really worked out as planned. But one really important thing to note, and I'm glad that you brought Facebook into the conversation at this point, because when smartphones first started to really make their way throughout our current culture, one thing that I was really hoping Facebook would be able to pull off is their platform that made Zynga what it is. I was hoping that would have a better, faster shift to mobile. A very difficult thing, high expectations, but the rapidness of mobile adoption has really thrown a lot of businesses, whether they are enterprise facing or consumer entertainment purposes, social networking, whatever the case may be. Mobile came a lot harder and a lot faster than a lot of people expected. So with Facebook not really being able to leverage, or Zynga rather, not being able to fully leverage the Facebook social network on the mobile end, which is a lost opportunity for Facebook as well. Zynga's had a lot of issues moving forward.
So let's discuss the business model. How does a business model of a web-focused company differ from that of a company with a focus on mobile?
There's a couple different things to consider here. One is the actual screen size of a mobile device versus your laptop. It's smaller. That leaves less room for advertising. Zynga, of course, makes a lot of its money off of in-app purchases and advertisements. So without the ability to keep people clicking on ads, or without the ability to incorporate ads the same way you would on a laptop or a computer, desktop computer, you're missing out on revenue right there. The other thing is the engagement time. Engagement time for games on mobile tends to be a lot shorter. These are casual games that are most popular on mobile games. And it's a huge disparity between the type of gameplay you see on mobile and what Zynga really was popular for, Farmville, games of that nature, through Facebook's network.
BuzzFeed Business describes Zynga as very employee heavy for a company that was navigating a shift from an era dominated by web games. Can you explain this? Are mobile businesses inherently smaller companies?
They can be. Some are, have the startup mentality and they're very developer centric. What can we do with the staff that we have, the things that we have available? Other instances that hasn't been the case, depending on the resources that are available and the platforms that a particular game or application wants to be available on. We've seen some companies really go in on building their teams and having a relatively large team dedicated to mobile. The ones that have been most successful are the ones that did that very early on. It seems like Zynga, even though they've made several acquisitions since 2011, and it's been a multi-year strategy in this anticipating the current trend that we see with mobile, they still possibly moved a little bit too slowly, got a little bit too big to be able to be nimble in the mobile space. And really, we haven't seen Zynga truly dedicate their efforts towards mobile until very recently. It was only earlier this year that we heard directly from the C-level executives at Zynga what their true intentions were when it comes to a very mobile-centric strategy.
What is CEO Mark Pincus's focus going to be for the restructuring of Zynga into mobile?
Well, a couple of notable things will be their actual distribution with mobile and how that proliferates throughout social networks. What they're really lacking on mobile is that network. Facebook's network truly helped them become popular and ring in that reel in that engagement. So with mobile, that hasn't really been the case. We've heard Zynga executives almost complaining about the missing links for Facebook's mobile network and Apple's as well. They haven't had as many hits, so the strategy that was working on mobile to have really big games that are kind of shouldering the revenues of the company, that strategy isn't working on mobile. So that's going to be an important focus for them, getting that network build up, and then also finding a way to better monetize the types of games that they will be focusing on for their mobile distribution. How are they going to get continued revenue, recurring revenue from those users? Are users going to be paying directly for the gameplay? Are they going to be able to find a better format for advertising? How are they really going to leverage in-app purchases? These are the things that they really need to continue to research and implement if they're serious about this mobile shift.
Wall Street hasn't reacted well to news of Zynga's layoffs. Their shares have dropped roughly 12%. Do you think this type of mass layoff is a sign of a sinking ship, or is this a predicted, premeditated step?
It could be a little bit of both. Honestly, Zynga's had so many issues in recent years. And like I said earlier, they took they put in effort to make those acquisitions relatively early on. They've been talking about mobile for a very long time, and it really hasn't panned out the way they expected, the way they wanted to. So it's an ongoing battle for them. So I would expect that a portion of this is premeditated. This is also sadly indicative of a sinking ship. It just seems this downward spiral doesn't really seem to be turning around, and every time we hear from Zynga, it's just more bad news. But I do still think that there is an opportunity to regain their focus, especially if they're going to make that very hard decision to scale down in order to scale back up the right way in this new market.
Kristen, just a year ago, Zynga paid $180 million for OMG Pop, the creator of the popular Draw Something game. One of the offices that Zynga is going to close as part of its restructuring effort is Zynga New York, which is OMG Pop. So we continue to see this trend of companies rushing to acquire startups in their prime. Yahoo's one that comes to mind. Do you think that that's a viable business model?
It can work. It can be beneficial. Yahoo has had a pretty bad track record in that regard, and Zynga is developing not the greatest track record with its acquisitions either. You really need a strong plan of action to integrate your acquisitions into your core business and the strategy therein. And we have seen some companies that were able to really put their acquisition strategy to good use. A lot of the examples that I'm thinking of are for the enterprise space. HP is another company that has been very adversely affected by this mobile trend, and they have had their own series of layoffs, and the verbiage that's coming from them is very similar to what's going on with Zynga. We need to scale down in order to be successful again, and really find a way to be more nimble and react to these very rapidly changing markets. So it could be long-term strategy. That's something else that we've heard from Zynga's CEO. He's not necessarily staying awake at night thinking about the stock prices that have gone down, and he's got a very long-term strategy for what he wants to do. Then again, we've been hearing about this long-term strategy for quite some time now, and I'm sure Wall Street is very anxious to see things turn around.
Well, Kristen, thank you so much for taking the time with us. Good to see you.
Likewise.
And coming up here on News Desk, Vine comes to Android and Toshiba showcases their new lineup. But first, Wikibon principal research contributor Jeff Kelly provides us with the big data angle on streaming music services.